out more. Today, we get to find out more about June Dairy Month, and Mississippi has 50 dairy farms with about 7,000 dairy cows, and one of those farms is located on Mississippi State University's campus. And joining us to share a little bit more is Amanda Stone. She is the assistant professor and extension dairy specialist at MSU, and she's part of the animal and dairy science major there. So welcome, Amanda.
I appreciate you having me.
I love the cow in the background. I appreciate the setting for you for joining us over at SuperTalk TV. And happy June Dairy Month. I know this is something you guys do day in and day out, but June seems to be that special month that we get to highlight the great industry that is the dairy industry. But let's talk about what you guys do there at MSU. Give us a little bit behind the scenes of dairy science on campus. What are you guys up to?
Sure. Yeah, so every month is Dairy Month in my job and my life, I guess, but it's nice to celebrate it in a little bit more formal way, if you will, during June. And there's lots of activities in your area. If you are interested in doing something during June Dairy Month, make sure you search around dairy farms in your area and see if you can find something in your area. But in my area, in Starkville, Mississippi, we are the only dairy farm in Starkville in Oktibbeha County. So the Mississippi State University Beard and Dairy Research Center is just that. It's a research center, but we also do a lot of teaching on our farm. So for producers dairy farmers who are coming from around the state, we teach best practices, things that we're learning from research, things not to do sometimes, right, that we learn from experience that is not good, and then things that we do learn that are good that they can implement on their own farms. We have a lot of students in the animal and dairy sciences major come out and learn hands-on what to do with animals, how to, treat animals from a vet perspective, because we also have the vet school. So vet students get to come out and get hands-on experience with cattle also. We also have an extension program. And so, again, we get to teach producers things, but we also get to take what we learn from the research, make publications, have workshops, anything that we can educate producers, educate students, and educate the general public, like what you're trying to do too.
Which I think is really cool. I think it's important for folks to know all the different research that goes on there on the campus and how that plays into the 50 farm families that are left that are still doing dairy, which is sad because it used to be well into the hundreds, if not closer, several hundred families I know. And over the years, dairy farming, like so many other ag industries, has just struggled. And so you've seen the numbers go down. But let's talk about your girls. How many is in the herd there on campus?
Sure. We have about 200 lactating cows. So those are the ones that are actually producing the milk that you would consume. All of our milk on campus goes to the campus processing center. So if you ever have gone to the Memphis sales store, gotten our Edam cheese or milk on campus anywhere in the cafeterias, that's all coming from the cows that we milk at our farm. We have their babies there also, right? So from baby calves, heifers, dry cows, which means they're on their vacation, if you will, for the 60 days before they have their next calf. And then, of course, the lactating cows, which everybody equates with milk production. But all of the younger ones eventually will produce the milk also. So they're important parts of the program, too.
I know a part of y'all's program, obviously, is the research. You are on a university, and you hear the term sustainability right now thrown around in all kinds of agriculture and farming, but you often don't think about it in terms of dairy farming. So in the realms of sustainability, what is some of the new research or things that farmers do on a daily basis to take care of not only their girls or their herd, but also their land for future generations?
So dairy farmers were sustainable before it was cool to be sustainable, I think. That's kind of a buzzword that is thrown around a lot over the last however many years. But dairy farmers and farmers in general have been taking care of their land, taking care of their animals, taking care of all of the resources that we know are not always renewable for hundreds of years, right, since the beginning of farming. And so they understand that you can't replace the dirt, right? You can't always change things that you would like to be able to, but you can't. And so they make sure that they're very resourceful, very efficient as much as possible, because we are feeding a lot of people with the milk and dairy products that we're producing. So it's really important that those animals are cared for and that the land that those animals are growing on is also taken care of.
And it's important, too, for us to learn where our food comes from. I know one of the great things there at MSU is y'all welcome students, grade school students. I know my fourth grader got to come, maybe it was last year, maybe it was a third grader. They're all running together with me, Amanda, but we weren't there. We came to campus at some point in time in the last year and got to tour the dairy farm there. What's it like to see, elementary kids light up and finally see where milk comes from?
So that is one of my passion areas. It's not probably in my job description to give tours to little kids out on the farm, right? But we love welcoming little kids out there because it really, we are so far removed as a whole, right? The general public is so far removed from farming that a lot of kids really, if you ask them where their milk comes from, they will tell you Kroger or Walmart. It never ceases to surprised me about that. And I think because I'm so inundated in agriculture, right, that I make sure my children understand that milk comes from a cow, meat comes from pigs and cows and steers and all of that. But they're educating their peers because their peers don't get it. I thought after so many years and so many hundreds, thousands of kids that would say it to me, it would start to get old or I would lose interest in it. But it never gets old because educating the public is one of the most important things that we need to do as an agricultural entity of any sort, because people really don't understand, but they want to, right? Like just the same reason people are listening to your show to learn about things that they don't know about. And if we can educate the kids, then those kids go home and educate their parents. And so we're kind of getting two birds with one stone, if you will.
Well, especially when you think about milk still being one of the most, economical nutritional beverages, right? For bang for your buck. Mm-hmm. It's good for folks to recognize all the hard work and the things that go on behind the scenes. You just take it for granted that the big white wall is there in your grocery store and you're picking it up once, some of you twice a week, and seeing maybe as those prices do go higher, not understanding, though, there's a lot of farm families behind that still need you to get it, even if it goes up. And there's a lot of nutrition there that your family still needs, even if those prices go up. What's it like right now for our dairy farmers? I mean, how tough is it for them right now during this time?
It has been very tough for several years, and I know this segment is called, good things, so I don't want to be too negative, but it's been really hard on the producers. I know all of us are seeing economic hits, gas prices are super high, everything is going up in price, and producers are experiencing that at a very high level. But it's very important for them that they still take care of their animals, they still take care of their land, all those sustainability things that we talked about, they're still doing that really no matter the cost, which is kind of what gets them into these poor economic situations because they care. This isn't just a job for them where they check out or clock out at the end of the day, right? This is their livelihood. For most of them, their parents did it, their grandparents did it, and they're inheriting all of this that they don't want to lose, right? They don't want to be the ones responsible for their parents made it through hard times. They don't want to be the ones to lose it. So all of these really hard economic times, COVID included, has made it really difficult to be a dairy farmer. And that's why you mentioned at the beginning of this segment that, we're down to 50. When I moved here 6 years ago, we were near 90, and that's just in 6 years. So we are losing them very rapidly. I hope that stops at some point and we get some new younger people coming in. But it's a really hard life. I mean, you have to milk your cows twice a day, every single day. Doesn't matter if it's Christmas, doesn't matter if you want to go on vacation or, I have little kids. If I get to go to my son's baseball tournament, they don't get to do that, right? So it's really hard. And there's not a lot of young people who do want to take that over.
Which is another reason why we should support local. We should think about when we're in the grocery store what we're shopping for. And even though it may not come necessarily directly from Mississippi, milk being one of those, you are still impacting the dairy industry here in our state when you continue to purchase those nutritious foods for your family. Amanda, I'd love to continue this conversation. Can you stick with us?
Yes, of course.
All righty, we're going to celebrate a little bit more of June Dairy Month coming up next with Amanda Stone. out more. We're finding out more about June Dairy Month here in Mississippi and celebrating the 50 dairy farm families in our state. And we're continuing our conversation with Amanda Stone. She is assistant professor and extension dairy specialist there at Mississippi State University, which has Starkville or Oktibbeha county's only a dairy farm, which I think is an interesting fun fact. What a cool career path, Amanda. So what led you down the road of getting into becoming a dairy specialist?
That's a great question. It has been a lot of weaving around in my life, but I agree. I think my job is the best job in the world. I think a lot of people, unfortunately, don't love what they do and get up every day and look forward to going to work, but I'm not one of those people. I love it, and I get to do really cool stuff all the time. When I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and when I was growing up, I grew up with horses and thought I wanted to do something with horses and didn't even want to go to college at all. My parents made the good decision to force me to go, right? And said, you can always have horses, but you got to go. And then I really never quit going to college. And now I'm just on the other end of it. So I did my master's and PhD at the University of Kentucky. And then we moved here, my husband and I, promptly after I finished my PhD, and have been here since. So I get all sorts of things that I get to do here, not just, with producers, which is one of my favorite populations to work with because they're wonderful. But I also get to work with students and other faculty, and I get to learn all the time, which I really enjoy.
And, I like this conversation too, Amanda, because you are on a dairy farm, I guess, there at Mississippi State, but you don't necessarily own one. It's not family farm land, but you found a way to sort of work in the agriculture industry. And I would say that goes not just for dairy farming, for all animal farming. When you read that it's animal and dairy science major there at Mississippi State, you have some kids that think, well, you know what? I kind of grew up in the city, and air quotes. I didn't grow up on a farm, but I'm interested in all this and I'm good at science. Could there be a place for me to sort of think of a career in this industry, even if I don't have, on the farm experience?
100%. And I'm so glad you asked that, because a lot of our undergraduate majors do not have experience. We do have some farm kids, right, that are coming to eventually take over their own farm, which is wonderful. They have a different take that they can bring. They have the experience, and they're going to then learn the textbook science. And then we have some students, most of our students, who don't have that experience but can learn it, because we have a very hands-on program here, which is different than a lot of animal and dairy science programs throughout the nation. It's getting harder to run farms, like we talked about before the commercial. So that goes for universities also. And so we are very, very lucky to still have working farms that we can take students out to. They can touch the animals and they can get experience that they wouldn't get other places. So when they go into their future career in agriculture, whether that be going to vet school to become a veterinarian, being an extension specialist or professor like me, going into, feed sales, whatever they want to do, they have that hands-on experience plus all of the science and knowledge that they learned from our classes.
I think kids or students need to also understand that I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Amanda, but I think it's 1% of the world feeds the other 99% in terms of farming and farmers. And it doesn't seem like we're just going to get an influx of folks giving up their backyards to, starting to grow crops and have chickens again. Although it may, if the zombies come, then we may end up having to do that. But really, it's about computer technology, STEM. There's all these other different, areas that are starting to play into agriculture in a really cool way. So even if you don't like to get your hands dirty, you could still find a job that helps produce good quality food and resources for the world.
Yes, definitely. So we have a lot of technology within the dairy sector, and within agriculture, it's becoming more tech savvy and tech friendly. But dairy has been kind of historically leading the way in that from the animal side. And we are very lucky and we're working very hard to maintain that and to exceed any expectations that we could have had. If you would have told me 10 years ago that we would be able to do everything we can with technologies on dairy farms now, I would have said there's no way we will get there that fast. But when you think about even just your iPhone or your computer, how much progress you can make in such a short amount of time with really smart people who are not me, who are doing that, figuring that out, we get to do a lot of really cool things. Our cows on our dairy farm here on campus, we can track how much milk they're producing every time we milk them, which you used to have it in big, weigh jars, we call them, where you would read where the little line is, like on a measuring cup. And now we don't need that. We have monitors for my research projects that we can monitor how much they're walking every day, how many steps they take, how much they're lying down, kind of like the Fitbits or your Apple Watch is going to tell you. So there's so many potential things that we can do with that information, not just from a research perspective, which is mostly why I use them, but also from a production standpoint. So we can make sure that our cows are comfortable, that they're producing as much as we can comfortably make them produce with our given resources, and that they have everything that they need. And if we notice that something is off that we might not be able to tell, with our human senses, then we're better able to help those animals, better able to take care of the land, be more efficient, all of those really important things.
Dairy cows really are some of the most pampered animals on the farm, because if they're not happy, they don't produce. And so you want to keep them extremely happy. If you ever get the opportunity to visit one, I encourage you to do so. They've got fans, they've got water, they've got like all the things that you would hope for in the Mississippi heat. Particularly, they're living it up, and they produce the most delicious things. And so everybody's a fan of Edam cheese that can be found there on campus. I did look, and you can't order any online, Amanda, until August. But I do know the shop is actually open on campus if you happen to be in the Starkville area. So I'm putting you on the spot, though. Other than the cheese, have you gotten a chance to try the ice cream that your girls make?
They make a very good ice cream. So there's the muscadine ripple, which seems to be a very popular one. My favorite is cookies and cream, just because that's always my favorite type of ice cream. So if you have a chance to try any of them, they sell them in those little individual cups, so you can try multiples and not feel quite as guilty as, eating a whole gallon yourself. You could try a few, but they're really, really good. And the chocolate milk is really good also.
Yeah, if you've never had, I guess, locally produced chocolate milk, it is definitely a decadent treat for you to sort of give a try. Well, Amanda, I love this conversation. I had the pleasure of working on behalf of the dairy farm families in Mississippi for several years, and every time I would go and visit a dairy farm, I would come home to my husband and say, "We need to sell everything and buy a dairy farm." And he was like, "No." It's a lot harder work than you think it is. But I was like,
but it's just, but so important.
But so important, and absolutely so rewarding. And like clockwork, you mentioned the girls get milked twice a day. What's the milking routine there on campus? When are your girls lining up to get their, to their stations?
Yeah, so we milk at 3 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So if you ever want to come out, you can't sleep, and you just want to come out and milk some cows at 3 in the morning, you can come right on out, and we will gladly accept help. They like being milked on a regular schedule. Cows, just like humans, like routine, right? So they are ready to be milked at their 12-hour intervals. And the reason we milk at those times beyond the 12-hour intervals is because we rely mostly on student labor. And so we can get our students back to their 8 o'clock classes after milking, and hopefully maybe sometimes a quick shower in between. They're not the cleanest of animals. But that way it doesn't interfere with their education, and they can still get milked twice a day with the labor that we have.
And y'all thought 8 o'clock classes were bad. What if you had to make it to a 3 a.m. at 3 a.m.
Yep.
milking? Okay,
yes,
man,
if we want to give excuses, right?
No,
There's
they
nothing
can't.
else happening at 3 in the morning.
This is really true. Everything's closed. You might as well just come on dressed as you are. Just slip on your boots and then head on into class. I love it. I think there's a lot of good things going on there. If folks want to learn more about what you guys are doing there on campus, where can they go?
Yeah, so you can look at Mississippi State's website and just search for Dairy Extension. Please feel free to always email me, call me, text me, whatever. My email is amanda.stone, S-T-O-N-E, at msstate.edu. And my cell phone number is 662-769-9941.
And I would say if your kids ever get the opportunity to go on a field trip to Mississippi State for the dairy tour, be a chaperone. Go with them. It's a lot of fun. You guys did a great
Yes,
job of
and
teaching the kids about dairy farming.
even if there's not a field trip scheduled, you can talk to your teachers, or we have just families come out too. So feel free to contact us, and we would love to have you all come and see where your food comes from.
Pretty cool. All right. Thanks, Amanda. I appreciate your time. And you guys stick with us. We got more for you coming up next.